Hello, everyone, and welcome to our September live stream. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jace, and I'm the founder here at AirWeights. If it's your first time joining us tonight, this is the first time you're joining us for a live stream, please let us know in the chat so that we can welcome you and say hi. This is a very community-oriented event, and it's about educating our customer base and making sure that everybody has the best knowledge both about our product line and how to use it for you to be the most productive with your system. Definitely some familiar faces in the chat. A lot of you are already customers. And again, this is for you. This is a live stream and event that is to teach and educate and provide insights. And yeah, we have a really exciting show for you tonight. If you have not already done so, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you have been here for a while and been attending, I recommend subscribing so that you get alerts about our upcoming shows and things we're doing. And then also, if you're an existing customer especially, I encourage you to subscribe to our email list. That's where we're going to be doing a lot of sort of more inside content about how we do things, new products that are upcoming, and yeah, just a great way to stay in touch with our community and our user base. So again, thanks so much for being here. You can also find us on Instagram if you have Instagram. That's another great way that we post a lot of content and a lot of behind-the-scenes shop stuff. Got some stuff on there today that was pretty cool, something that we're going to talk about later in the show. So thank you all for attending again. Always a great time. And usually we have pretty good odds. We will have a giveaway during the show, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, we've had some winners. Actually, one of our winners is actually here from our last live stream. So yeah, excited about tonight. Our topic is going to be vacuum clamping and shop-wide solutions. So, you know, traditionally we've been a company that makes work holding equipment, vacuum work holding equipment for, you know, prosumer CNC routers. And there's so many different applications for vacuum work holding off of CNCs. And we have a new product that I want to discuss today that opens up some of the opportunities to move vacuum work holding off of the CNC in a really clean and simple way, and is also a product that you actually can use on your CNC also, especially if you have a dog hole pattern machined in at the right spacing. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we'll go through that whole topic in quite a bit of detail and show kind of the whole process, this new product, how it works. We'll also do a little bit of an aside about how we actually manufacture that product. That'll be an educational piece that'll help you understand more about creating dedicated fixtures for production work, which I have right behind me. We'll do our typical Q&A. At any point during the show, if you have a question that you'd like to have answered by me, please just drop it in the chat. Excuse me, Kate will be flagging questions and putting them up on the screen for me later in the show. So if you came with a question, please put it in the chat now. If you have a question that comes up during the discussion, please leave it in there. Keep in mind that it's not always going to be in context, right? So like, you know, ask a full question if you can to be as clear as possible. Check your spelling and try to be as succinct and clear as possible. And then we'll do a giveaway at the end of the show. Today, we're going to be giving away a 24x24 complete system. We've been doing this ever since we started live streams, and we've been doing quite a few, like once a month. So great opportunity to win something and take something home today. And then at the end of the show, we'll wrap up. So pretty exciting evening for you. I'm certainly excited. And I am going to also mention right now off the bat that if you don't win, we do have a sale that we're going to offer today. And rather than what we've done in the past, creating a sale for the live stream, we're going to be promoting one of our influencers tonight. So Greg from STL Woodworking has been a very, very close partner of ours. He's done some great content about our products, and we want to give back to him. He actually was in here in the shop. He took a vacation with his wife. They came by the shop, and they got to see the whole operation, how we do things. And just a great person. We love Greg. And so if you are looking to place an order tonight, please use discount code STL Woodworking to receive 10% off your order. And we just appreciate Greg for everything that he does, including, you know, answering questions in the chat, being knowledgeable about our product, understanding how it works. So super grateful for you. Thank you, Greg. Thanks for being here, and looking forward to continuing our partnership together. So vacuum clamping, shop-wide solutions. That's our topic for tonight. I'd like to start with a bit of a backstory. So we just got back from the Texas Woodworking Festival. We went down to Austin, and it was our first trade show ever. It was really a great experience for us. We learned a ton, of course. You know, like your first show, I learned that you completely overdo it, and don't know how to do things as efficiently as you probably could. But ran down there. It was an incredible show for us. We really loved it. 10 out of 10 recommend to anybody who's considering going to that trade show. It was, great brands, great partners, great influencers. Just the whole thing was a really top-notch experience. Austin is also just an incredible city. The Austin School of Furniture is there. There's so much to see, and a really great, robust community down there that's coming together around woodworking and making. So such a great time. And again, can't recommend enough going. They also had really incredible classes that I thought were pretty outstanding. Not that I got to attend them, but I did see some of the content from them. So when we went down there, we actually went with a new product that is a brand new offering for us and expands our impact as a business to people who don't have CNCs. This product can be used both on and off CNCs, and that product is called the AirWeights MFT Vacuum Clamp. And Kate, if you could pull up the listing, there we go, on the website, we'll show you exactly what that looks like. And I have an example behind me. This is one that I just made today as a test for our fixture validation. But it's basically a 9x9. True size is 8 3/4 by 8 3/4, and it's 11/16 thick, which I know is kind of a weird size, but we're serious about achieving very precise thicknesses with our products so that you can tile out multiples and be, in the same plane and have a reliable surface to depend on. So 11/16 because we face both sides, and it has our standard 1-inch grid spacing that's common to all of our products that we have to date. And it allows you to customize different zones, just like our standard product offering for a given workpiece size. So you can see there on the screen, we've got 2 vacuum ports, and you can partition off 2 independent zones and hold multiple parts, 2 parts at once. Or you could actually plug one of the holes and just have one thin strip around one of the holes. You can hold very small workpieces, and it's completely configurable. It works with our hard stops as well, which have been popular for us. And it locates rigidly on a 20mm dog hole pattern with 96mm on-center spacing. So we'll go through the demo of that in a second. But this product comes out of the box with everything you need, of course, just standards AirWeights fashion. The standalone product is available for pre-order right now and comes with a vacuum table, pre-installed gasket, a small hardware kit that includes a fitting in case you don't have a Vacudogs, which is a company that we've developed this product in collaboration with. We'll talk about that more in a second, so that you can just plumb in vacuum on the edge, just like the rest of our products. And it's really a high quality precision machined product that's very affordable and yields very accurate results. So like I said, it's available for pre-order. And we expect to start shipping those out around October 24th for the first orders. We took some pre-orders down in Texas. And just today, we fabricated the fixture and are getting things ready to ramp up production for these. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, because I think it's a great teaching point for the community. But let's do a quick demo of this thing so you can see exactly what it's all about. So I'm going to actually move the camera just around to this table I have set up over here, so bear with me. Heyo. All right, everybody. So I have, for those of you who were in Texas, you saw this. And if you weren't, here's what we got. So I have a worktop here, and I machined in the compatible dog hole pattern. These are 20mm diameter holes that go through the entire table. And it's a nice sealed smooth surface. That's an important characteristic, is this surface is, it's finished. So here's our product, and it comes, like I said, with gasket pre-installed, and you can mount these dogs on the bottom side so that when you place it over your MFT top, it locates precisely over a Vacudog. A Vacudog is essentially a fitting that fits into your worktop and allows you to plumb vacuum right into the surface. We will eventually offer our own version of this, but if you're looking to pick one up now, they are available. So you put this in from underneath, it screws in from the top. There'll be some new design changes for this thing that are going to make it even sweeter. But really cool fitting, and this just mounts right in to your tabletop. So basically, the way this works is if I turn on my pump, so I'm actually going to take you off the pump. You're resting on it right now, so just bear with me. Bring it down around here. And we'll make a little space, frame you. So if I turn on the pump right now, I've got a little manifold here. I'm going to close the release valve, and this is sucking air right through this vacuum fitting. So if I take my MFT vacuum clamp and put it over this hole, now when I cover these holes, air is being plumbed into this cavity on the top surface. And then if I take a piece of material and put it on there, it's completely rigidly held. I'm moving the table around. It doesn't come off. And then this allows you to do any sort of handwork that you need: sand, flush trim, round over, etc. And when you're done, you simply turn off the pump and release pressure, and you can remove the part. So a very quick and repeatable way to do handwork that doesn't require a lot of setup. So again, this is a configurable grid. So if I bring you up just a little bit, you can see that we have 2 ports here, and it's double-sided, meaning that it seals and holds itself down to the surface that it's sitting on, and then holds the workpiece on top. And one of the advantages of our design is that the gasket is recessed into a channel. What that does is it creates hard contact through the entire stack and creates extremely rigid work holding on your workpiece so that you can be confident when you go to work on it. So again, this grid allows you to put any of our existing accessories right into it. So I can actually take a strip of gasket and put it right down the middle of this thing, and now I have effectively 2 zones. This will allow me to partition off different sections and hold a smaller piece that maybe doesn't fit the whole area. So again, if I turn on the vacuum pump, if I was to cover this hole with my hand, now this piece of acrylic is held down. You can actually see in here how the acrylic is compressing the gasket down flush with the work surface. And I just realized that I don't even have this release valve closed. There we go. So now it's really squishing it down. So, inside that small cavity there, we have a sealed vacuum zone and the piece is held. But if I release pressure here, then it's able to come right off. So very flexible, very modular, very configurable, and something that we're really excited about offering in our product line because it opens up so many things. It opens up the ability to work off of a CNC with vacuum. You can get very affordable vacuum pumps that would work with this. It's a fully sealed system, so flow rate isn't as much of an issue. Our 5 CFM would pair beautifully with this. And even smaller pumps than that do work. So it's a really robust system that allows you to do a lot and gives you flexibility both on a CNC and off of a CNC. So if that's something that's interesting to you, please check it out on our website. And yeah, like I said, it works with all of our existing product line, accessories, gasket materials, etc., and really opens up a lot of things. Now, the other thing I want to mention, because this is largely a CNC community, the other thing that this opens up is the user base that is more cost sensitive, that can't quite afford to have one of our full-fledged vacuum table systems or vacuum work holding systems that are purpose designed for CNCs to have access to it. So a lot of people, out in the maker community make really great, work holding spoil boards that have dog holes and have a lot of these things. And a lot of the machine design has gone to this open frame concept where you have access from underneath the table. That wasn't always the case, but it's becoming more and more popular. And so if you have access underneath, you can have Vacudogs in your spoil board and then just simply, place a pod over top of it. And if the workpiece is overhanging, you can cut all the way through and hang your material off the edge and profile all the way. So a really, really nice feature to add on to a CNC setup if you're not ready to make the leap and go all the way to, a full-fledged vacuum table solution that we've historically offered. So I'm like really excited about this product if you can't tell. The other thing I want to mention is that, right now we're just taking pre-orders for the MFT clamp by itself, but ultimately we will have a kit that will have the MFT vacuum clamp and all of its hardware, bench dogs, our own, in collaboration with Vacudog, we'll have our own version that'll be made by them and branded, black anodized, really sweet. We're really looking forward to getting this out to a lot of customers and helping people, build what they love and do it a lot more efficiently. So super aligned with our mission, and I'm really excited about the product, if you can't tell. So that's our MFT vacuum clamp. I just wanted to touch on that, and so many use cases, so many different opportunities to use vacuum work holding throughout your entire shop. It doesn't have to be just constrained to a CNC. And you're seeing that in the market too. There's a lot of products coming out, not just from us, but all over the market that are really starting to embrace this as a methodology. So if you're interested, please check it out. I'm super excited about it. So kind of back to basics of what we do. We are also fabricating these in-house. Of course, we fabricate all of our vacuum tables in-house. And behind me, I have our actual vacuum fixture setup that I just made today. So this is still in process, but I think it's such a great teaching point for people to see how we are actually walking the walk. We're walking the talk. We're not just talking about how to do things and expecting customers to go do them without having proven it ourselves. We run our own tables, we run our own pumps, we run our own systems, we run our own fixture plates to fabricate the very products that we are giving back to our customers. So, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that this works, and we're going to be pumping these things out for the lowest price that we possibly can and deliver unbeatable value to people. So, if you look behind me right now, I'll bring you along for the ride. I have a 2-section vacuum fixture on this Onefinity Elite Journeyman. We use these machines to fabricate our products. And you can see that there are individual positions for each one of these little MFT vacuum clamps. So this is the test piece that I made today in this first position right here on the CNC. And you can see that I actually machine this side and then flip it over and use some machine this side, flip it over and use some registration, kind of like a dog, just a little bit smaller, to locate on those counterbores, and then boom, it goes right on, and we machine the second side. And we're doing 25 at a time on this fixture. Now, I just cut this today and we haven't gone through and gasketed everything yet, but eventually, this exact setup right here will be duplicated throughout the entire fixture, and we'll load a half sheet of material and cut out 25 of these at once. So, basically the design just makes sure that where I'm cutting through on the boundary of the component, that I am outside of my vacuum zone. So this zone stays completely sealed, and we'll have a little bit of extra gasket material in these 2 recesses to seal those off as well and allow us to drill the through holes in the MFT clamp right there. And then we'll be able to shut off our pump and unload finished parts and then put another sheet on and run again. So that's the power of having a vacuum table on your CNC. And our own experience with this, our own use case, is the exact thing. You know, our business is basically a case study for what we're trying to share with people and what we're trying to help people do. So we're using our products to make our products, and we're providing unbeatable value to our customers with precision machined equipment. And that's really what I mostly wanted to talk about related to our fixture design. It's a very, very, I would say, not super advanced, but it's an advanced process to do this. But if you can do it once and you're able to replicate it per product, and you have a product that you need to make in volume, this is the way. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. The work holding is extremely rigid. You cut all the way through, and you're loading raw material and taking off finished goods, and that's the best. So yeah, I wanted to just discuss that. And yeah, I think that's pretty much a wrap on the MFT product. So again, super excited. Check it out on the website, and make sure to if you are going to buy, give Greg a little kickback and use discount code STL Woodworking, excuse me, for 10% off your order. So we also have another product that we recently released that I think, you know, people have started to catch on to using. That's another great candidate for off CNC work holding, or if you just want to dabble and try something. Our new 12 by 12 size is a really great product to just get your feet wet. So if you're not ready to spring and invest in a full-fledged vacuum table system, you can start with something pretty small and start to get comfortable with it, and then, you know, upgrade down the line pretty cost effectively without losing a lot of money. And it gets you an understanding of vacuum work holding, both on a CNC with 4 screws and 2 pins, or off a CNC on your bench. And that 12 by 12 is really simple, really clean, a very direct approach to vacuum work holding that lets people gain an understanding of the power of it in a production setting and just as a convenience. So definitely check out our 12 by 12 as well as the MFT vacuum clamp. There is a price disparity because, you know, one is more intended for, it's our same exact process with a sealed base and, you know, 4 edge inlets and all the same modularity that we build into the rest of the product line. And the MFT vacuum clamp is, you know, its own thing that is in collaboration with Vacudogs. So yeah, check out our 12 by 12 size if you haven't already. It's a great little product, and we're pumping those out super clean. So seems like the chat has been pretty active. So I think we're going to jump into the Q&A right now. And I just, you know, I want to leave it plenty of time for answering questions. And then we've gone through quite a bit already. So Kate, if you want to fire up the questions, let's get them rolling here. Anyone know the decibels of the pump? So we have 3 different pumps, and all of the decibel ratings are listed on the website. I just answered this to a customer recently, and they're all documented there, but I'm pretty sure it's less than or equal to 60 for the 5, less than or equal to 67 for the 9 CFM, and less than or equal to 69 or 68 for the 17 CFM. And you know, I had the 17 CFM on the bench right here running. I can show it to you really quick. It's also down there. You know, like I said, we use our products to make our products, but you know, the 17 was just right here. And great little, great beast of a pump. It comes with everything you need to install and get going right off the bat. The one thing that a lot of customers miss with this thing is these little mufflers. So there's 4 mufflers that ship with the pump, and these things are super important to install, or else it's really, really loud. So this is what's going to get you to 68 dB. So you install those. You don't need Teflon tape on these fittings or on these mufflers. They just thread right in, and it's just to dampen sound. So there's not really any air stealing requirement. And then it comes with, you know, an elbow filter, T gauge, and then a 1/2 inch push to connect fitting. So really awesome product. And I can't say enough good things about the 17 CFM pump. We use them every single day, and they run, you know, pretty much 8 hours a day, and we love them. But you know, we're also biased because it's our product. So 68 is as loud as you can expect. I can usually have a conversation in the shop just like this over a pump running it when dust collection's off and everything, but you probably won't hear it in comparison to your dust collector. All right, Walter, are you going to make a DXF file for pin screw holes like all the other sizes? Yeah, we will have a DXF available just like all the other sizes for the MFT vacuum clamp. We just posted it for the 12 by 12 size. I learned that was didn't actually make it up on the website, but that is there now if that's what you're looking for. We're about documentation and giving people the tools they need to be able to make whatever they want to make. And I recognize as somebody who does a lot of programming and design myself, how important it is to have that reference geometry to work with, especially when you think about using these MFT vacuum clamps on, on a CNC. That's like a pretty important thing. So yeah, definitely will be available. More than likely, it'll just be the top layer, just like the rest of our stuff. But it'll be plenty to do whatever you need to do with. All right, Carl. Is there any reason I would not want to use traditional work holding instead of AirWeight? Should I keep my existing hold down board? It's a really good question. And the answer is yes. I'll be the first to tell you that vacuum's not for everything. If you've been here before, you know that the requirements for vacuum work holding are smooth, flat, and non-porous. Those three things, if you can get those three things, then there's a lot of methodologies that are open and available to you. If any one of those things is not optimal, you can use workarounds like thicker gasket material that has more compression and can take up error for flatness, or cutting your stock up into smaller pieces to minimize flatness error. Or there's tips and tricks you can use to get to a solution, but sometimes it's just not practical. And so there's an opening to still use traditional work holding when you need it. Like if you're flattening a slab or you have rough sawn lumber and you need to just face it, it's too big to fit through your planer or something like that, putting it down and throwing some clamps on it might be the most effective way to get to a solution quickly. But one of the most important things about our vacuum tables is that they index on your spoilboard. We have precision machined holes on the bottom side diagonally across from each other. And the system comes with pins that you drill holes in your spoilboard using our DXF, place the pins in, boom, the vacuum table screws down in the exact position that you told it to be based on your software, your CNC, your setup, whatever. So, just by unscrewing the table and lifting off and taking the pins out, you can be back to your existing spoilboard. And that flexibility is something that sometimes is required when you're making a project that otherwise you would not be able to make with vacuum. So we're aware of the fact that there are limitations with this approach, and we're always coming up with new ideas and new features, new tools to help get people to being able to use our product 95% of the time. But there'll always be outlier cases, and there are situations where that matters, and I feel like we've done a good job with the design to make sure that you're not stuck. You can get back to your vacuum table being on the CNC or taking it off the CNC in a matter of minutes. JR, woo, great to see you. Jace, would it be possible to reduce the height of the AirWeight table to gain a little more Z height, say 0.81 down to 0.25? Yes, so there's a few different approaches that I've seen done with this. There's a lot of different creative options for how to reduce the Z height. One of the ways that you can do that, I know that you have a Onefinity, JR. You can actually boost the entire machine so that the feet sit at the same plane as the vacuum table. That's an option. A lot of people I've seen recess the vacuum table into their spoilboard if they have a smaller one. That's an option. The actual vacuum table itself is as thin as I can possibly make it right now because of our edge inlets. So if we didn't have edge inlets, then we would be able to go to a thinner material, and that would reduce the Z height, and it would be a feature. But it requires underside access to work. And the Vacudog, like that we just talked about, opens up a lot of opportunity for things like that, and we're excited about that. And that becomes a whole different product category when right now we're extremely universal. Any surface, throw it down, it works, connect on the edge. So that's a pretty important feature for us as a business to be able to continue to provide value to people is standardizing. You know, and I'm sure I know you're familiar with that. Trent, I have the 5 CFM vacuum pump with the 16 by 16 AirWeights table. What is the longest length of tubing that can be used if I want to plumb my shop for vacuum pressure? Good question. So, you know, in the same way you can run, you know, compressed air all over your shop, you can run vacuum too. And it's a really useful thing to have around the shop. If you do go this route, I definitely recommend having a reservoir, you know, a pressure vessel, just like you would have, you know, a tank, just like you have in your air compressor, that gets you to not have the pump running continuously. These are continuous duty devices, but without having storage, you're gonna run into kind of like a, you know, constant thing. So you're probably ahead of me on that, but just gonna say it just as a recommendation. The longest length of tubing that I would recommend from the pump itself is the amount that ships with the product, which is 8 feet. So beyond 8 feet, you know, we've validated our products with 8 feet of tubing. If you go beyond that, you start to get into a lot of head loss, especially when you're doing downdrafting applications where you're sucking air through an MDF spoilboard and expecting to have work holding at the top surface. And so, you know, basically 8 feet is the official recommendation. You can almost use a long length as storage if you're not using it for downdrafting applications, but it's something that is a little bit specific per user and shop and location. And so, you know, our official recommendation is 8 feet. I bet you can get away with a lot more. David, got an email from you. I got to get back to you. Jace, how do you handle stock less than 1 inch? Okay, so I think what you mean, I'm thinking you mean like XY dimensions. Is that right? If so, let me know in the chat, David, if that's what you mean. If it's under 1 inch square, you really have to think about the physics involved here. So, you know, the down force holding the material down is the pressure difference times the amount of area you have. So if you have, you know, 1 square inch, and our pumps are generating, you know, usually deeper than this, but say you get about 10 pounds per square inch of pressure difference, you got 10 pounds pushing down on 1 square inch. And then the resistance to sliding is, you know, that down force times the friction coefficient, and that gives you the resistance to motion laterally, which is really what you care about. In some cases, you care about lifting force if you have an upcut geometry, but for the most part, you know, with low helix geometry, cutting geometry, or down shear bits, you're really worried about the lateral cutting force. So in that case, your whole goal, because you're limited by the physics, your whole goal is to maximize the amount of available area that you have inside a sealed vacuum zone that sits completely under your finished part. So we have some examples of people that have done stuff like this. We showed them in a previous live stream. I'd encourage people to go back and check that out. The material that's the most appropriate for dealing with very small, intricate, detailed parts is called cover gasket. One of the issues with creating individual vacuum pockets is if you have a roll of gasket and you're making all these little pockets, it takes forever. So All-Star CNC sells a material called cover gasket. We resell it in sizes that fit our nominal vacuum table sizes. And it allows you to peel and stick down a layer of gasket onto a faced fixture plate, and then come with an engraving bit and machine all the little vacuum pockets that you need, make holes in the center to plumb down to the vacuum plenum underneath. And now you have this little individual vacuum pocket that is basically optimized, you know, for the amount of area you have available within, you know, a given component that's, you know, less than 1 inch in any linear dimension. So, you know, we have customers that have made HDPE keychains in you know, King Color Core that are 2-tone with engravings, and, you know, they're 3/4 of an inch by 3 inches long. Or we had a customer who actually got to meet in Texas, Don, who made dominoes out of wood and used his laser to make the marks and then profiled each of the dominoes on his CNC using cover gasket, you know, with our system. So Small parts are totally possible. It just takes a lot of setup, and ideally you have some volume behind it to justify the fixture fabrication process. Robert, I am having trouble getting my tile gasket to hold some parts. Do you think tape to assist in the holding of the material will help, and what type of tape? Good question. So yeah, tile gasket, I've said this in previous live streams. We have a whole live stream that's about spoil boards and using bare spoil boards and tile gasket. And the requirements are the same: smooth, flat, non-porous. If you have those three things, your part should stick. And then, the other thing about spoil boards and tile gasket is that because you're leaking universally, you're intentionally leaking to create a layer of negative pressure on the top surface of the spoil board or at each one of those little ports in your tile gasket. The relative pressure difference that you achieve is lower, which means that you need more area, a larger part, to be able to hold it down. And that manifests in two ways. Like, one, if you take a hardwood board that's, say, whatever, 6 by 24, and you put it on a vacuum table, it might hold the whole stock. As soon as you cut out, a little 3-inch diameter circle, it may not, because you've then taken, the bulk holding force of all of that material and taken it away. So the rest of the stock might hold, but that little 3-inch circle, we'll see, depending on how smooth, flat, and non-porous your material is. The most effective way to improve holding force on tile gasket with our systems is to cover unused area. So say you had that piece that's 6 by 24, cover the rest of the tile gasket with something smooth, flat, and non-porous. Fixture plates from us is a great material: marker board, melamine, acrylic, any sort of non-porous material that you can put down that you don't mind sacrificing. Some people have used things like Oramask or plastic wrap, but you basically want to eliminate leaks. And the more leaks you can eliminate, the deeper the pressure difference and the more holding force you can achieve. Tape, I would steer more towards focusing on minimizing leaks than introducing another consumable. The whole point is, like, let's get away from those. And if you're really struggling, rather than using tile gasket, you can use some of our other gasket materials that'll just create a vacuum pocket underneath your finished part. So you can cut through outside that pocket and be totally fine and not worry about it. And I think that's a methodology. A lot of people get, really, obsessive about, like, making tile gasket work. And sometimes there's another approach that's easy, quick to set up, and doesn't create as much headache chasing those really smooth, flat, non-porous requirements. And really, tile gasket is made for processing sheet goods. That's the whole purpose. That's the reason why it was developed, is you want to put down big sheets of material on a large industrial CNC and have focused vacuum on smaller components so that you don't lose them. When you're cutting out drawer boxes or something, when you have smaller parts on a traditional CNC that doesn't have tile gasket and just has a bare spoil board, sometimes you lose those small parts and have to leave tabs or onion skin in order to get them off the machine cleanly, and then you have post-processing. Tile gasket, really what it does is just allows you to cut smaller and smaller components and not lose them to slippage. So, I would say probably not. I wouldn't go the tape route unless I'm misunderstanding the question, but I would just try to seal up everything a little bit better. Dove the Sea, what do you have in development for the future? Yeah, lots of interesting things. Next year will be a really fun year for us in terms of new product launches. I would definitely encourage people to follow along and subscribe to our email list, like I mentioned before. One thing that I guess I'll tease a little bit is, one of the biggest issues that we have as a business personally, and me as a business owner, and one of the the other part of that is there are a lot of other business owners like me that have the same problem. Automatic tool changers are about to be the norm in this industry, and there are a lot of machines that are limited to 48 by 48 travel, 4 by 4, or they're limited to very, very close to the nominal range of their travel. And that's a problem for us because we literally use every single square inch of our available travel. in order to fabricate our product. We're optimized for yield, and that allows us to keep costs down. If we have to sacrifice usable area for an automatic tool changer, it becomes a lot more labor intensive to the point where it's almost just worth it to do the manual tool change. So looking forward to developing some solutions there. And then also, always iterating on our product. We've had a very stable product design, and we intend to keep it that way. And we have more designs coming, both in the accessories for the existing line and something really fun and interesting outside of that. So that's about all I'll say about that. Hangs for fun. Question for AirWeights. As I get to doing the final cutouts with bridges, how does the vacuum still hold the material? Very good question. So there's a few different approaches for this, and I think I've pretty much said this for every single question, but check out some of our previous live streams. Lots of great content. There's a few different ways you can do it. If your material is smooth, flat, and non-porous, like I'm talking really smooth, really flat, really non-porous, you can put it right on a spoilboard. And if your part's really big, it'll hold just fine because you have so much available area. The downforce is extremely high, and it won't move. But for a lot of people in the prosumer, more hobby space, the machines aren't that big, and the amount of downforce just isn't there in comparison to running cabinets and doors and et cetera. So as you get smaller, you need to come up with other ways to isolate vacuum underneath your finished part. And that's really the key, is what is your finished part geometry? You figure out what that is, and you make a little gasket zone that sits inside that boundary. And if you have interior through cuts that go completely through the material, you put a little gasket outside that geometry. And you can do that directly on one of our MDF spoil boards. You can turn on the pump and have little strips of gasket using our onboard gasket material or our nested gasket squares. And you place your material on top of that, cut out, go all the way through, and take it off, and you're done. Super clean and direct. You can also use tile gasket. The key there is controlling your depth of cut to make sure you're just barely cutting through. I'm talking like 5/1000ths of an inch through. And you can, if you do that, you'll preserve the service life of the tile gasket material and yield a finished part at the end of your cutting process. And again, you heard a customer previously asking about this. That material is, it has some requirements. Again, smooth, flat, non-porous, and that you have enough available area to actually hold. Stuff like people cut aluminum sheet or like plastics on bare spoil boards or spoil boards with tile gasket on them pretty regularly for us because the material is so consistent and so non-porous. The further into the spectrum you go and towards raw lumber, the more strategies you need to use to get there. And then the final approach is using a fixture plate. That's basically a non-porous piece of material, like a non-porous spoil board that you put on top of the vacuum table, and you make a little gasket zone and poke a hole through that goes down into the vacuum table plenum underneath. And then you have a little sealed air chamber. As long as you cut through outside that chamber, you're good to go. So lots of different ways to approach it. And it's really all about making sure that you stay sealed as best as you possibly can. Carl Kraft. I just ordered the MFT. I can use my existing 5 CFM pump and just split the vacuum line as long as they can individually be turned on and off, correct? Yes, that's absolutely true. One caveat that I would say here is if you're doing extremely precise machining tasks where you really, really care about tolerances, the moment that you flip a valve, you introduce a momentary change in the pneumatic system. And if you're not careful about that, it can lead to discontinuity in the surface that you're machining. So if you're doing a surfacing operation where you're going like a 3D carve or something like that, be a little bit wary of that. You can add a reservoir, like I mentioned earlier, to kind of mitigate some of those fluctuations or soften them. But just be aware, just be a little bit careful of that. But absolutely, the theory all supports having a single vacuum source that's plumbed to multiple systems, and a 5 CFM can easily handle an MFT in addition to a 16 by 16, 12 by 12, whatever you have, probably even up to a 24 by 24. So definitely a thing. And for your 5 CFM pump, it has a 5/16 push to connect. So any 5/16 pneumatic fittings, those push to connect fittings, you can find them all over the place, are readily available. You can get little ball valves, all that stuff. And we also offer manifolds on our website so that you can basically, connect a, your vacuum pump to a manifold, and then it'll break out individual lines for each vacuum table setup. And those little those little things have ball valves so that you can adjust which table's on and off. And it also has a release valve, because sometimes you energize the system, you finish your carve, and you shut off the pump, and everything's so well sealed, you can't get the thing off. So to save time, we have a valve that you can open and has a filter on it to make sure you can equalize the system, remove your component, and then turn on the pump, close it, and you're back to work. So manifolds are super nice, and you can also build them yourself. It's not rocket science, but that's another thing in the pipeline is new manifold designs. We're working on that. Mike Moody. Mike Moody, the MFT vac clamp looks very useful. Can you grid off to hold small 2x3-ish 0.040 aluminum plate? I do these in bigger batches, and this new tool would be great. Thanks. Absolutely, yeah. So 2x3-inch. Great teaching point again. 1-inch grid pattern. So here's our MFT vacuum clamp. Here's a port. You could plug this one or have another position that's just partitioned off for that given size. But you can make a zone that's effectively 2x2 here, and hold a little tiny part right over this port, and that's about as small as you can go. But you could expand that out to 2x3, or if you really wanted to, you could go the route of a 12x12 and make a custom fixture plate that would have the exact geometry of your finished part and a little gasket zone with holes in the center so that you can hold your part exactly. If you're in a production environment, I would probably lean that direction, but the MFT is so flexible and can do so many different things. It's another good way to go. So up to you, but definitely a thing. Eldon, what is a Vacudog? Yeah, so let me grab one really quick. This is check out the replay too on the live, but this is a Vacudog. So this is a little fitting that goes into an MFT tabletop, and basically the current version slides in from underneath, and then you screw this cap on the top and it seals, and then you have a little vacuum fitting that plumbs into the top of your MFT vacuum table. I did a demo of it earlier. I'm not going to go back and do that right now because it's recorded and there's other viewers with questions. But basically, if you take this and then put one of our vacuum clamps on top of it that indexes with dogs onto the workbench, and this is sitting under here, you have a two-sided vacuum clamp that you can use with a grid pattern to partition off and make individual sections, and no air lines in the way at all. So keeps your work surface extremely clean and accessible. You don't have to worry about tubing going all over the place. So this is a really cool thing, and we'll actually be offering these in the future, standalone, but also as part of it, more importantly, as part of a complete bundle that include the MFT and the Vacudog and bench dogs and mounting hardware, all that stuff. So yeah. Shannon, I do a fair amount of relief carving. Some machining can take 4 to 6 hours. Do the vacuum pumps have a duty cycle? Continuous duty. Yeah, we have people that run our pumps for like 30 hours at a time. We do 72-hour burn-in testing. I have done plenty of that in the past. We run our pumps 8 hours a day, every single day. So go for it. Continuous duty. Dwayne, how much suction is lost with longer runs to slats or any vacuum holding solution? It's a really good question, and it depends on a lot of different factors. The most important thing for the slats is making sure that you're really well sealed, because by introducing your pump, your manifold, all those fittings, interconnects, tubing, there's a stack up of potential losses. So making sure that you have a really nice airtight system is important. I'm pretty ssure you have our 17 CFM pump, Dwayne, if I'm not mistaken. I also hope your dad's liking his 24x48 that used to be yours. But anyway, that pump has plenty of flow rate to keep up. So you should have plenty to work with. If you're starting to see losses, send me an email. There is an option that we could offer to upgrade you to some larger tubing. And if you're doing a lot of downdrafting, the larger tubing will really help with the continuous flow rate and moving air a lot quicker. So you can imagine, like, if you're trying to run a mile and then breathe through a straw, it's a lot harder than like run a mile and breathe through a PVC pipe or something like that. So the whole idea is not restricting airflow, and there could be an option to upgrade you to some larger tubing that would help with some of that. So if you're running into issues, just please send me a note. Trent, what is the material the tables are made of? Good question. Everyone would like to know, but it's not something we disclose at this time. It's part of our competitive advantage, and we're really proud of our material selections. But right now, it's kept private. PBIC 129. I have a 9 CFM pump and only use it for one small piece using 2 ports. Can you burn out the pump, or is it not a problem? Usually not a problem. These are continuous duty motors. They're meant for industrial application, and I really wouldn't worry about it, especially when you're doing like that big of a pump with 2 small parts. You're probably pulling really deep vacuum. Pumps like being at deep vacuum. They really like being in that curve, not running wide open. They're more likely to burn out there. Not that ours would, but if you were trying to take best care of your pump, make sure it's pulling deep vacuum all the time, and that'll give it the longest service life. But in your case, yeah, I highly doubt it. Trent, sources of storage for vacuum. Yeah. Don't have any available from us right now. Most of our applications, we just run the pump continuously, and our products are designed to support that. But if you're looking for vacuum storage solutions, I think Joe the woodworker, I think it's what is it called? Veneersupplies.com, I think, might have some options and some auto cycling hardware. That guy's been around a long time. He's doing really cool stuff. And yeah, I think that, there's probably some hardware. He has some like kits for building veneering equipment, and there might be some like little things you could grab and piece together a system. But that's about as far as my recommendations go for vacuum storage. Robert Stone Cold. Can it work with my Shaper Origin? And I already have the Vacudogs. Yeah, so the MFT Vacuum Clamp for sure. I can't tell you how many Shaper requests we've gotten. It's just so funny. Kate's laughing in the background, I bet. But yeah, it'll totally work. The key with the Shaper is making sure you can cut all the way through. The Shaper tape stuff that they have is fine. And if some people have recently bought our 12 by 12 size to try on the Shaper just to get an idea. And the cool thing about that is you can, the 12 by 12 is supported with fixture plates, spoilboards, pre-applied tile gasket assemblies, all of our, our entire product offering just in a small size. You could also do a 16 by 16 if you have the available travel. Some people are trying to use it with bench pilot. So there's some considerations there. But man, I'm like, got to do something that's purpose built. But anyway, another discussion. You can use it. Rich Miranda. Can you recommend a pressure relief valve, not a manifold, sort of a foot switch to release the suction to move the workpiece in the woodworking environment? Turning on off does not work. Yeah, so you can buy foot pedals. They're pretty readily available. There's a good chance that we'll end up offering one. We don't have that to date, but it's a very simple device, and they're readily available on the market now. I'd recommend trying it. If you don't want to use your hands, and I get that when you're doing a lot of handwork, you want to use them for other things. So foot pedal's great. Our pumps do have a remote, on-off remote, and our manifolds do have release valves. But if a hand's too much for you, then yeah, I'd just find a foot pedal out there. There's plenty of them on the market. Quick Google search will get you there. Robert Burks, can you put gasket material on top of the tile gasket, or do I need the fixture plate? I would not recommend that, because basically the tile gasket hole pattern is like offset at an angle. So when you try to run a gasket for a piece that's square, more than likely you're going to end up getting like, unevenness going through the holes. You can put gasket directly on top of a bare spoil board that doesn't have tile gasket on it, or a fixture plate. And having the arsenal, like, you know, having a bare spoil board, having a fixture plate, and having a pre-applied tile gasket is a really great way to approach it, because then you have every tool in the toolkit. You know, obviously some gasket materials to go with that, but those, you know, you can get some pretty cost-effective solutions there. But, you know, having those individually is what I recommend. And I'm a fixture guy. I don't know what to tell. Like, I've been like preaching dedicated vacuum fixtures since I built this company, and I don't think many people use them. I think I'm like the only one that uses them. They're so, the work holding strength is just so much better because there's no leaks. It's a perfectly sealed system. And I mean, again, that's what we do all day. So I'd say for 29, if it's a 24 by 24 for $29, I'd say get a fixture plate and some gasket. Graham, what's up? Suggested way to repair a gouge in the AirWeight panel, maybe a filler and then recut to match surface pattern. Yeah, so totally a thing. Plenty of people have done this. You can mix some filler, you know, with CA glue and just kind of like, you know, get enough in there that it starts to kind of connect. It's the same thing you would do for like woodworking, you know, fill it with sawdust and glue. But I would recommend using something that's ideally not wood to do the repair. You could almost get away with just CA glue in some cases if you get the right stuff. But yeah, CA glue with some filler, and then you can use the DXF to remachine. It doesn't have to be perfect, you know, like the gasket's going to conform, but as long as it's close, you should be good to go. And then, you know, I'll just take this opportunity to talk about this briefly, and thanks for the question, Graham, but your vacuum table is a lot more durable than you might think. So a lot of people worry when they first get a vacuum table, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to cut into it and it's going to be ruined forever and I can't deal with the investment. First of all, we'll work with you. Like, we're not going to like sell you a product and be like, you damaged it, sorry, it's on you. Like, we've helped a lot of customers repair tables, and or if they just feel like it's beyond repair, we'll work with them to get a new one at a fraction of the cost of the original purchase. So and then within 30 days, we'll help you out straight up. So, you know, I'll say that, and then, you know, think about how it works, right? You've got the first surface, you know, the top surface of the vacuum table, all the tops of the little squares, the top of the perimeter. Then you have this channel depth, right? And so say you cut through, and you cut through just enough to where the cut is not deeper than all those channels. You basically have no love lost. There's no issue. Like, you got a little mark in your vacuum table, call it a scar and move on. Don't waste your time worrying about it. If you cut past that channel, you just created a leak path between those zones. So like, you can't partition off those sections of the grid anymore. But between there and the bottom base plate, you could cut all the way in and still put an accessory layer on top, use a fixture plate, use a spoil board, whatever. And quite frankly, you should be using that stuff anyway. So, you know, there's a lot of, it's a little bit more forgiving than people tend to think. Now, if you cut all the way through the vacuum table plenum and through the base plate in the bottom, take a piece of blue tape, cover the hole, and put it back on. Or you can fill it. People have filled it. Or we'll sell you a new base plate. Like, that's something that we've done plenty of times. You can take the base plate off with screws. If you need to, install a new strip of adhesive gasket around the interior seal, put the base plate back on with the pins, screw it all down, ideally under vacuum. You don't have to, but it's a nice touch. And then you're back to a, you know, pretty new table, aside from this hole that goes through the center. And again, accessory layers, spoil boards, fixture plates, totally still usable. The thing that we cannot recover from in our design is if you plunge completely through and you breach the edge of the vacuum table. If you do that, it's a new table, and that's just the way it is. So, you know, we've seen a lot of people cut into their table over the, you know, more than 2 years we've been in business, and most of the time it's a pretty easy solution to get to, you know, up and running again. So that's what I'll say about that. Thanks for fun. I have my RapidChange ATC on the front of my 1F Elite Journeyman and had to machine away some of my spoilboard. Can I cut the slats where it goes up to the ATC? It needs to be attached to the QCW. Good question. And you don't need to cut your slats. In fact, I would not recommend it. On the bottom side of the slats, there are slots And basically, when you mount the QCW slats, you screw through the QCW from underneath. They're designed to be attached to the secure from below QCW. Secure from above, you'd have to knock out the inserts, but that's doable. If you have a secure from below QCW, you place the slat on top, and there's these slots in the base plate that allow you to move the slat forward and aft to account for the fact that the ATC will be mounted to the front rail of that QCW. So there should be clearance for you to install the RapidChange ATC on the front rail and then shift the slats aft. And if you're smart about it, you can do it so that the grid spacing still aligns in the Y direction, and you maintain a consistent reference across the X, direction. Like when you're translating an X, you would be basically going through the same channel or same set of squares the whole way, and that can be really nice for repeat locating with our hard stops, or making fixtures that span multiple slats, things like that. So SP, is there air loss downwards into the MDF MFT table? Really good question. So yeah, Vacudog recommends sealing all of your MDF. So taking some material and sealing your MFT top, because MDF is porous. Vacudog is developed by the guys from Track Tubes. Their MDF is actually the same stuff that we use, coincidentally, which is MedX. The stuff's a lot more, it's a lot more consistent density, and it's a little bit denser than the standard medium 45 pound per cubic foot MDF. The stuff's really a nice material, and it'll seal well to that if you have a high enough flow rate pump. But if your pump is not very high flow rate, like if you go buy $130 pump on Amazon that produces, I think they're like 0.8 CFM or 1.6 or something like that. You just need to make sure that you seal those surfaces. Like I would seal the top surface, and then any of the dog holes that you're going to be putting your Vacudog in, I would seal the hole as well, and that should do you right. And it doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be like a big involved process, but just something to help minimize leaks. Alex Duarte, how do you get your mustache so sexy? Well, it turns out all you have to do is go to Texas and be in a wedding, and that's all you need. That's all you need. Guy McMillan, hey, how's it going, Guy? I would like to connect two 24x24 boards that may be active to hold one project. Is there any vacuum loss from one board to another, which may create a different suction level on the project? So really, really great question, and something that I think, there's a trade-off in going for modularity or minimizing gaps. So as an example, we sell two complete 48x48 systems. One that is composed of 4 individual 24x24 vacuum tables and a manifold that can allow you to independently control those. And then one that's a 2-zone that has 2 24x48 tables and a manifold to independently shut them on and off. And when someone's processing large sheets of material, I always recommend that they go the route of the 2-zone, because you're going to cover the entire thing, and you don't want to have gaps between your vacuum tables, because wherever that gap exists, you don't have any vacuum there. But the gap is like an inch wide. It's just a long strip. So as long as you're aware of that, and your part bridges it or it comes up close to it on one side, shouldn't be an issue. But it also really depends on your work holding approach and what technique you're using. If you're making a dedicated fixture, you can just like I did here, I can bridge 2 different zones. Like underneath this table, I got 2 individual 24x24s here. This is set up like our 4-zone. And then, my through port to this particular position is plumbed into this position 1 vacuum table. And then the next position is plumbed down into the position 2 vacuum table. So as long as I have my 2 front valves open, I'm gonna bring air into these 2 positions. So you can kind of play with the spacing and use the DXF on our website to guide your design process. If you're using a spoilboard or you're using a pre-applied tile gasket assembly or just tile gasket on a spoilboard in general, you just want to be aware of the fact that at those seams, there is vacuum loss. And it's always, air is always going to find the path of least resistance. It's just like electricity. And it's just you're not going to have any vacuum in that thin strip. So, if it's a big part, probably doesn't matter. You can also plumb vacuum from one table and bring the zone out to cross over boundaries. So there's a lot of creative ways you can do it. And you really got to start to think about it in layers, like how the different layers stack up and where vacuum is at any given point. It takes a little bit to get your mind around it, but it's really just, it comes down to sealing. Eldon, for now, I am only making a few signs for people, 20 by 17 or so. Will getting the 24 by 36 AirWeight system be able to just use the small an area, or do I need to go with the 24 by 24? No, absolutely not. You can definitely go with the 24 by 36, and definitely check out some of the documentation on our website and our YouTube channel and other live streams about how to effectively cut parts that are smaller than your vacuum table. We do it, everybody does it all the time. You just want to create a little zone, a little gasketed area, or partition the grid off underneath your vacuum table. You can also use, this is not something that people do very commonly, but you can use our 24 by 24 accessory layers on larger size products. So for example, you could buy the 24 by 36 and buy a 24 by 24 spoil board and run one strip of gasket along the back edge that makes a seal underneath that spoil board, and then plug all the rest of the holes with the included rubber plugs. And then you basically have a 24 by 24 area that's active and the rest is just off. So there's a lot of ways to go about it, and our system is very flexible and modular to support whatever your need is. Thanks for fun. Is it possible for us to get the cut code for making replacements for any oops? Yeah, so on our website, we actually publish the DXF of the top layer of the vacuum table for all of our products. For the MFT, it's not up yet, but we will put it up there. But for everything else, it's readily available for download under the vacuum table installation section of our instructions page. So go check it out. You can download the DXF, and then you can just cut, recut whatever feature you want. Hythe Woodwork Designs. I've just purchased 2 Vacudogs, and I'm using it for slab flattening. Will 2 CFM be sufficient? It depends on a lot of things. 2 CFM probably is plenty for 2 smaller zones. I'm guessing if you're using the Vacudog by itself, you probably have just the foam gaskets that come with it in the kit, and you have 2 of those, and you put the slab down and suck it down. That works probably, probably plenty. You know how it is with tools. They, buy ones, cry ones kind of thing. I think like a 5 CFM pump is a pretty affordable entry point. I also think that yeah, it's really nice to say that you don't need much flow rate, but I always recommend people go up in flow rate when they can, if they have the budget. If they don't, totally fine, and you just are going to spend a lot more time looking for leaks. But the advantage of having a little bit more flow rate is that you can keep up with leaks a little bit better. You don't have to be as careful about leakage, and as long as you're getting a really nice reading on your vacuum gauge, you should be good to go. But for a lot of these smaller area products, even something as small as 2 or 1.6 or 0.8 in some cases will work. You're evacuating a much smaller area compared to some of our, like a 48 by 48 system, and you'll end up being able to do it faster with higher flow rate and be able to compensate for leaks. Whereas with smaller, you have to be a little bit more aware of what you're doing and aware of your sealing and how flat your materials are, etc. Thanks for a fun question. Can I have the pump where it is basically in a soundproof area, but might not have the best airflow? Would the pump run hot, and would that matter? Very good question. The answer is no. I would not put it in a soundproof enclosure that's really tightly, bordering the pump. It needs natural convection and airflow around it in order to cool itself. And it uses fans to help, pull air through the system and cool off the motor. It does have an overtemp protection, so it'll shut itself off before it burns itself up. But you really need to keep it in a well-ventilated area. Something like a closet could be okay, but ideally, you know, not like a soundproof enclosure. I would not go there. Jace, I use this on my pneumatic systems. Could easily be piped to vacuum use. Talon pneumatic foot pedal valve kit, 5-way 2-position pressure control, part number with lock on Amazon, $25. Yeah. So like I said, thank you for the recommendation, JR. That previous question, go check out this link that JR shared. And there are so many available on the market, very easy to use, and a very easy accessory. I'm sure, I'm 95% sure we're going to offer one, and maybe even have a bundle that would include that with our MFT vacuum clamp, or like a larger bundle that has 2 of them or something. But just don't have anything right now to offer. We're just getting this product out, and we'll build up the product line and accessories around it as we get it out there. Yes, the burning tree production. This is our live stream winner from last time, our last live stream. So congratulations again. You probably have said this, but what is the biggest vacuum table the 5 horsepower vacuum pump can handle? So I wish it was 5 horsepower, but it's not. That would be a little bit different. It's a 5 CFM pump, and the biggest table that we support with that pump is a 24 by 24. So, you know, that's the official, like if you look at the website, that's how the product line is structured. What I'll say is that if you're using pure vacuum clamping, the topic of this live stream, where you are pulling vacuum against a closed system, you can definitely do larger sizes with that, but it requires either direct mounting or using a fixture plate and some gasket material to make sure you're fully sealed and that you've chased down all the leaks, because, you know, you'll end up being flow limited for things like downdrafting through MDF spoilboards or using tile gasket. It's just not, there's not enough flow rate to keep up with the aggregate leak that you're intentionally leaving there to provide a universal work holding surface. So 5 CFM is officially recommended up to 24 by 24, and everything smaller. It can handle 2 16s, it can handle 4 12s, but just be aware of basically anything that's either directly downdrafting or downdrafting adjacent. Mike Tutu Moody, at what altitude could the 5 CFM work properly? So we're at 5,500 feet here in Lakewood, Colorado. So we do, one of the cool things about being here is, we're testing, validating, and using our products at elevation where we're at a disadvantage compared to somebody at sea level. So, I think like we have a customer actually tomorrow that lives in Vail that's coming down to pick up their system, who's actually making some pretty cool products. I hope we can do like a little collab with them. But anyway, they're going to run a 9 CFM and a 24 by 48. Any of our flagship offerings, any of our complete systems, I'll stand by at any elevation. If you are like at really high elevation, like if you're at like 8,000, 9,000 feet, you might want to upgrade the pump just to make sure that you have adequate flow rate. It's not really so much about flow rate at that point, but you're just not going to get to the ultimate vacuum that you would. So yeah, I think 5 CFM works adequately for any of the sizes that we have put together as complete bundles up to 24 by 24 at pretty much any elevation. Formation flyer. Could I run 2 9 CFM pumps in a single 24 by 48 bed to increase holding? Yeah, you could. I would highly recommend going to a 17 CFM pump as opposed to 2 9s because primarily the power consumption. So one of the most amazing things about our 17 CFM pump, which I showed earlier briefly, is that it pulls 10 amps on 110 nominal. And actually, like if you're pulling deep vacuum, it's less than that, but that's the advertised spec if you're running it wide open. If you run 2 9s, they're 9 amps a piece. So you're talking like, almost double the current consumption, but similar flow rate. So I would highly recommend going to a 17 as opposed to a 9 or 2 9s. The only instance where I recommend going 2 9s is if you need redundancy. So there are some applications that we've had with customers where they just literally can't afford to be down. and they'll actually opt for something like 4, 5 CFM pumps, so that if one pump fails, which doesn't happen very often at all in our product line, but they're just, you know, future-proofing their system. They'll have 3 other pumps that are running, and they can keep up with the required flow rate, at least to get through a job, and then, you know, replace the pump, have one on hand, that sort of thing. So definitely modular approaches, and if redundancy is important to you, that is a cool way to go. And if you don't care about power, especially. Yeah, the 17 CFM pump is like one of my favorite products. I think it's such a game changer for this market.
Okay, I think we made it to the giveaway.
I think you're muted.
If unless people have any more questions that they want to throw in there.
Okay, but, I don't know. Can everybody hear Kate?
Oh,
I can't hear you.
I don't know. It says my
mic is
hooked up.
If you can't hear Kate, which I can't, which maybe you guys can. Oh, okay. So it's just me. Thanks. I'll shut up now.
So to enter the giveaway, just put #fullvac in the chat, and we'll give you guys some time to enter. You only need to enter once. Your comment will only be counted one time. So yeah, and if there's any other questions, feel free to ask Jace.
All right, I got my audio figured out. Sorry, Kate.
It's
that
okay.
was my fault. I don't know why it thinks that this microphone has a speaker on it, but anyway. Yeah, so this is a really great time for any additional questions that may have come up during the session, or that you just thought about now, or something prompted you. It's also a really good time to enter to win a free vacuum table, which is pretty sweet. Yeah, lots of great attendance. This is the lowest odds we've had at our live streams. So sorry, should have been here yesterday. Nice, nice, nice. Love seeing some of these familiar faces. Pete, Nature's Live Edge, Mike. Mike, I'm curious how your pre-cut, we did some custom pre-cut fixture plates for Mike's Onefinity slats. That was pretty cool. Hope those turned out good for you.
Okay, we have another question about the tile gasket.
Eldon, one last question. Do I need to get the MDF with the tile gasket attached? No, you can buy MDF spoilboards bare. And that's an important feature, because sometimes having a bare spoilboard is really, it's like a really nice Swiss Army knife. So if you get one of those and you get either our nested gasket squares, which are very affordable and have, you know, die cut nested squares that are adhesive backed, you just stick them on the spoilboard. You can just lay a piece of material right on there. If you cut through outside the perimeter of that square, you're all good. And you can cut all the way through and just kiss the spoilboard surface. So, you know, and then of course you can also use a roll of what we call onboard gasket, same thickness as those die cut nested gasket squares, but it's just a roll, and you can make whatever shape you want. Just make a loop on there and use it right on the spoilboard. And it's such an easy, direct way to set something up. So really good, like I said, kind of Swiss Army knife to just have a bare spoilboard. And if you have a sheet good that's, like I said, smooth, flat, and non-porous, I'm tired, then you can just throw it right on the spoilboard and cut it. It's pretty amazing. Like when I cut the sign for the Texas Woodworking Festival, I just threw down the spoilboard and a piece of pre-finished ply, and I cut the sign right on it. No gasket material at all. So, you know, with big parts like that, it's really nice to have, as long as you have a sheet good that's really, you know, really smooth.
All right.
Cool.
We have one other question, but I think we've also, maybe we'll give people one more second to enter and take this last question. If I can show it. There we go.
Yeah. So Pete, yeah. So Great to bring this up. Jace, you mentioned the ability to drill holes in the center of the squares for indexing. Yeah, so Pete actually got one of our vacuum tables and uses his, indexing and repeatable locations are extremely important for the work that he does. And so, we went back and forth about adding dowel holes in the center of the vacuum table squares. And you can go down at least 3/8. I think it's even, in a lot of locations, it's like 5/8 deep before you create an issue. But if you're 3/8, you're safe everywhere. So you drill a 1/4-inch hole 3/8 deep in whichever one of the squares you want using the DXF provided. And then all of a sudden you have these repeat stops. You just drop a pin in and you butt the material up to the pin. That's a really great way to go. And something that we've done for, we help Pete get there, but we've also done factory for customers for an additional charge, or if they bought a significant order from us. So the thing that I like about the hard stops in comparison to that is that it really works with the layout of our system super well. What I mean by that is, and I touched on this in the last live stream, but basically if you center your vacuum table installation on the given nominal size for the product, the center of each square will be a 1-inch increment from the next. And our hard stops are designed to provide a reliable stop that's a bull nose that's tangent right at that position at the center of the square. So you can really easily say, I'm going to move my machine from my home position to a work offset of 6.6, or I'm going to move to 6.6 and set my XY0. And then I have stops that allow me to position the material right on the money every single time. So it can make your setup process extremely efficient, to the point where, we've had more than one customer and some internal discussion as well about marking the vacuum table, basically graduating it so that you have numbers on the table that you can just look at and say, okay, I'm here. So yeah, the dowel holes are really great, and a really clean, very repeatable solution. And for a lot of people, being at an exact coordinate like 6.6 or 4.6 or 3.3 or whatever doesn't really matter. But for those who are a little bit newer and might want to be able to just do things really easily and repeatedly, or have a known work offset that's a nice round number, that's a cool way to go too.
Okay, well, I think it's time to draw a winner.
Let's do it. Richard, woo! Yes.
Yay!
All right. Richard, Kate's going to tell you what to do.
Yeah. You can go ahead and email us at info@airweights.com and just send your shipping address and your phone number. And yeah, we're giving away a 24x24 system with the 5 CFM pump. I think Jace probably mentioned that. So go ahead and shoot us an email, and I will put our email address in the chat as well.
Yeah. Oh, there's a question from JR that just got lost up there. Using your storm system, like the storm vacuum pump, the high flow rate.
Let's see.
If you can, there's a way to do this. I have a way. We've done it for customers. We basically make a bunch of bottom ports in the base plate, and then the vacuum comes up from underneath, and it's freaking sweet. But anyway, it's doable. We can talk. Congrats, Richard. This is so great. Yeah, Kate dropped the email in the chat, and you can just email us, info@airweights, or you can fill out a contact form on our website. Either one works. And we'll get back to you and get that shipped out. I will take this opportunity to mention that we do have a lead time right now. I forgot to mention that earlier. We're running 1 to 2 weeks. We're actually not, but it's on there. We like to under promise and over deliver. So it's usually quite a bit less than that, but we're just about caught up after the show. And yeah, just wanted to mention we do have a bit of a lead time. Pay attention to that on the website, and we'll update it accordingly as we get completely back in stock here. So that's it. So thank you all so much for joining our September edition of our live stream. We love doing these, and it's just a great way to connect with our community. Thank you to all the new faces who just came here. and we really appreciate you all. Yeah, we'll see you in the next live. Everybody take care, have a great night, and we'll see you next month.